Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today. First of all, I want to say that our hearts go out to all of those folks who are dealing with opioid addiction. We know here in Palm Beach County, and certainly in West Palm Beach, the number of overdoses we see has gone up exponentially. As a matter of fact, we have seen an uptick in the use of Narcan by about 48%, to the point where we're now spending about $200,000 a year on Narcan to save people who have gone into an opioid overdose. This is a horrible thing for any family to go through, and I am glad that we are focusing a lot of attention on really ending this crisis that we have. Today, I want to commend the West Palm Beach Police Department on this very successful operation. Addressing crime and combating the opioid deaths in our community is one of our top priorities here in the city. And today, with Operation Pocket Change, we send a very strong message to anyone who engages in illegal activity that they do so at their own peril. This operation will have a direct and positive impact on some very specific areas of our city, particularly in the northwest area. The people who live there have been telling us for a while that there is a lot of drug dealing going on in the Northwest, have pointed us in certain directions, and they've asked us to help clean up the neighborhoods that are being impacted by this opioid epidemic. So the West Palm Beach Police Department's response is exactly what the public service is all about. So while I applaud the work that the police department has done, I also wish to thank those residents in the Northwest who have supported us and have cooperated in helping us fight crime and improve the overall quality of life in the city of West Palm Beach. Again, I'm very proud of the work that this police agency does, how responsive we are to the community, and this is going to make a huge impact in the lives of so many in our city. So I'm happy right now to turn it over to Chief Sarah Mooney. Sarah?
Thank you. Try to get that out of the way. I'd like to thank you all for coming today to hear a little bit about this operation that we started about 9 months ago. First off, I'd like to take the time to send my heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of people who have lost loved ones to the opioid epidemic, especially this year. Our hearts go out to you, especially during the holiday season. But this year we saw an increase in opioid overdoses and deaths in our city. And the use and distribution of illegal drugs locally has had a tremendous impact on our public safety resources. In response to the increasing overdoses and related deaths, it was our intent to pursue justice for those who have passed away this year and on behalf of their families. So 9 months ago, we started Operation Pocket Change. In March of this year, the department started this outreach program that actually led to us determining that some of our local panhandlers in the city actually were using money that was collected through the goodwill of others that are donating to their cause. They were actually using the money to support their opioid habits. In addition, they were selling the opioids. So in an attempt to identify and arrest the main suppliers and dealers in the city, we started this operation. The agents directed their efforts towards the mid-level dealers within the city and some in the county with the joint effort of several other local and federal agencies. In September this year, we had a spike in some violent crimes in the city, and that led to us expanding our operation into some of the North End neighborhoods where we saw very localized crime involving shootings and some homicides. Yesterday, Operation Pocket Change culminated with the execution of search warrants and arrest warrants related to the investigation. In total, the operation yielded more than 30 arrests for persons that were directly tied to opioid sales in the city and or violent crimes. Out of those arrests, 4 of the dealers were directly attached to opioid deaths. In addition, we made 29 physical arrests to date in regard to this operation, and we've conducted at least 11 search warrants. There's still 8 outstanding arrest warrants on the books right now. But in regard to the warrants that we served yesterday, the search warrants, we've also recovered 17 firearms and a multitude of illicit drugs in the neighborhoods that were targeted. I want to take this opportunity to recognize the efforts of the West Palm Beach police agents who spearheaded this effort, and also to thank our partners in the operation, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Drug Enforcement Agency, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the U.S. Marshals Service, and the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. All of these organizations were instrumental in this operation being a success. Although it was successful, we understand that there's more hard work to be done, and we have to continue our efforts to ensure the public safety of the city of West Palm Beach. And we continue to ask for the public's help in order to help us achieve that mission. In closing, I want to share that in response to our initial information that we put out, some media outlets made inquiries to local nonprofits in the community regarding homeless people and some of our most vulnerable people in the city. And I want to emphasize that this operation really had nothing to do with homelessness. We do discourage panhandlers, however, and if somebody feels that they would like to contribute to helping the homeless, we would rather you do so by donating to city partners such as the Coalition of Palm Beach County for Homelessness, and also the Real Change movement that we have downtown on Clematis Street. At this time, I'd like to introduce West Palm Beach Captain Brian Capper, who was the commander in charge of Operation Pocket Change, so he can kind of answer some of your questions if you have specifics that you'd like to hear a little bit more about in regard to this operation. Brian?
Thank you. Again, I would like to reiterate the help that we received from our federal and state partners in this. Again, the FBI, the DEA's helped us significantly with this, ATF, FDLE, and as well as the State Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Like the Chief said, 4 prosecutions, 4 arrests came through overdose death investigations within the city of West Palm Beach. One of them was recently prosecuted with the assistance of DEA and the U.S. Attorney's Office. He was found guilty and convicted. And again, we have 3 others that we have charged with overdose death related crimes involving the sale of heroin and the overdose death of those people. I'm just going to go through some of the numbers real quick. Again, the Chief said it, but we started this operation in March of 2017. Just culminated it yesterday, December. Again, we are here to address the opioid crisis and violent crime in the city of West Palm Beach. The operation largely centered around the Palm Beach Lakes corridor, as well as the area of Banyan Boulevard north of 25th Street in our city. But again, like any investigation, it led us out into the county and other places within the city. There are 29 currently in custody on this, 8 still outstanding, for a total of 37 people that we intend to arrest in this. 23 charges out of the 37 people involve the sale or trafficking of carfentanil, which is commonly known as the elephant tranquilizer, fentanyl, or heroin. There were 7 people arrested for firearms-related charges. There were 18 total firearms seized in this operation and 11 search warrants executed, including 3 yesterday alone. I want to touch on a couple of the people that were arrested in this. The first individual I would like to point to is the upper right-hand corner here, Lakeithia Harris. She was charged with 12 total felony charges, including possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and multiple counts of drug trafficking. During the operation, one of our undercover officers purchased, during one transaction, over 2 ounces of carfentanil alone. This drug is so dangerous that just touching it can kill you. He touched it without actually knowing it, so luckily the bags were clean there. We also seized more than 1/8 kilogram of heroin or fentanyl from her in addition to the carfentanil, over 20 grams of crack cocaine, 44 grams of cocaine powder, as well as some ecstasy and the firearm. Another gentleman here, Mr. Fuller. He was arrested on 7 felony charges, including drug trafficking, possession of ammunition by a convicted felon, During the arrest, more than a quarter kilogram of cocaine was seized. I'm sorry, a quarter kilogram of heroin or fentanyl was seized from him. Mr. Williams right here, Trenard Williams, this is the gentleman who was prosecuted federally, and the enhancement came in for the death of an individual from a heroin overdose. Mr. Roll, down here, the lower right-hand corner, Armand Roll, he was charged with trafficking in heroin, trafficking in cocaine, possession of firearm by a convicted felon, sale of heroin, cocaine, and ecstasy. During an execution of a search warrant at his residence, we recovered 2 firearms. And just so you know who we're kind of dealing with here, Mr. Roll has 27 prior felony arrests and 17 prior felony convictions. And then the last individual I'll point out is the upper left-hand corner of the second poster. That's Timothy Morris. Mr. Morris was charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He was just picked up yesterday. He has 17 prior felony arrests and 6 prior felony convictions. So these are clearly not nice people that we're dealing with in a lot of these situations. Okay, other than that, I'll open up any questions.
So basically, you became aware that some of the people that were asking for money, primarily in the downtown area, but maybe other areas, were using that for...
Yes, what we were running into is during our investigations, our undercover officers were out there and trying to make contacts so we could purchase illegal drugs and further our investigations. Some of the people that we were dealing with were clearly addicted to the drug. We made contact with them, and in some cases these same people were trying to sell drugs to try to raise money, of course, for their own addiction. What we chose to do is use this to further our investigations up into the mid-level and higher level people within the city of West Palm Beach. And that's how this all kind of kicked off, which led us into some of the larger scale dealers. And again, with the assistance of our state and federal partners, we were able to do so.
So you were undercover working panhandling, or?
Just going out trying to purchase drugs, much like any other operation.
Captain, if I can interrupt, I think this starts with an outreach program through our first level of patrol officers, and they relay the information to the narcotics unit, which you command of, and when they developed the information, they started doing an investigation back in March. So I see where your question was going, and I just want to make sure you understand their narcotics unit, but this starts at the very bottom and then gets to that.
So there were complaints, and there was information that this kind of activity was going on, but people who were purporting to be just needing.
Let me just speak on that real quick. I know you mentioned the downtown area. This actually, we were seeing a spike in overdose deaths and incidences out west towards like where our hotels are and things like that. A lot of the panhandlers we were finding were located in those areas. Whether they had had intervention or interactions with our officers, maybe been identified at some other point in time, and then we're finding them overdosed in the area. So they started putting the pieces together that the people that we're talking to out in the street are the same ones that are using the drugs and or selling the drugs. But it started out a little bit further west on Palm Beach Lakes in that area, not in the downtown area. So it was people that had had interactions with the police, but then they had further interaction when we were dealing with them on the backside with drug overdoses.
So this is citywide?
Yes.
So these people that were arrested, these are the middle to high level drug dealers. They're not the panhandlers.
There are a few that can be classified as panhandlers, yes. And again, this is a mix of people here. This is clearly not all high level or all low level people. This is clearly a mix. This is the culmination of the entire operation from the very bottom up to the top.
So you got tipped off by the panhandlers, but the operation wasn't about the panhandlers who were by it. It's more about...
No, what we're trying to do here is make a difference. Last year we had an obscene amount of overdoses. We had 447 overdose responses by the police department in the city. That number is now, as of yesterday, 705. So it keeps jumping, and we are trying to make a difference here, make an impact, and we want this to stop.
The 4 arrests, pending arrests on the people that were connected to overdose deaths. Are they facing murder charges, or federal murder, or
the gentleman who was prosecuted federally, he was mostly drug charges, and that was an enhancement on the charge itself. The other 3 right now, have not gone to trial yet, and it most likely will stay in the state system, and we're still waiting to see how they're going to be charged.
And as far as you know, the charges they're facing are not homicide charges, but...
Well, again, the state attorney's office is still looking it over. What I've said here is that we have evidence to suggest they were directly involved in the overdose death of these people.
I wonder, sir, if you can just go over the numbers. You said 705 overdose calls so far this year, and the 400 number was from...
447 is 2016, and we have jumped to 705 this year. May and June was definitely our highlight. May we jumped to 120 overdoses that month alone. What we have seen is a steady decrease from those numbers. So we hopefully those numbers will continue to fall.
Do you think it's part of the steady decrease might be in part because of this?
We would certainly like to think so.
I just want to add something. You know, our first responders are responding to this crisis every day. And, you know, they see the horrible after effects of people being involved in opioid addiction. I can't even imagine how frustrating it must be not to be able to make a difference and stop this, and to be able to say now that we've been able to address 30-something people who are involved in this. It's just a huge step, and it's got to be so affirming to the people who are out there every day trying to deal with this on our streets. So I just want to say a special thank you to all of you for the great work that you're doing.
Some of these people, you said they were involved in violent crime in the city. Are they charged with other violent crimes, or any of them up there?
The ones up here are mostly charged with either firearms or ammunition possession violations. And again, this investigation is far from over. It's still ongoing. Some of these people we look to potentially charge with other crimes as well, and hopefully linked to some of the violent crime that is going on in the city.
What is some of the violent crime that they may be linked to? Or
I mean, we'll start right at the top: homicides, robberies, aggravated assaults. But again, we are investigating that, and we hope, you know, to make some connections there.
We have time for a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Anybody else?
Could you spell your name, sir?
It's Kapper, K-A-P-P-E-R. First name's Brian, B-R-I-A-N, yes.
And your captain?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.